Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to my channel, Journey to the Truth and Total Randomness. And today I want to talk about oil and why it's going down and what what effects it's going to have on our economy and the world economy as we go into 2015. There seems to be a division between uh, experts saying that one side says the production of oil or the cost of oil going down is a good thing. The others are saying it's going to be a bad thing. And I, this really got me curious, so I started reading a lot of articles online about the the benefits and the negatives. And what I noticed is a lot of these articles are putting out a lot of basically misinformation. Um, not if they're I don't know if they're doing it on purpose or if it's simply because they're not very good at researching. Uh, but I would say 80% of the articles had no factual information or numbers to back up their claims as to why it would be a good or bad thing. So I decided to take the time, do the research, find out more about oil, between the Brent and WTI, which is WTI, just for future reference in this video, stands for Western or West Texas Intermediate oil. That's basically sweet oil that you get from the United States. Sweet oil is basically any oil that has a concentration of sulfur less than 0.024%. Um, and then you have the Brent oil, which is what Saudi Arabia has, and it's still considered sweet oil, but they have a concentration of sulfur which is 0.037%. So it's slightly higher than the WTI oil, but it's close enough to be good enough anyway. Uh, in addition, they have what they call tight oil. Tight just refers to fracking. Tight means any oil they have to basically extract from the ground using extra processes and such. So just if you guys aren't aware of that terminology, because it might come up several times while I'm discussing this. This probably ain't going to be a short conversation, so I hope you you like hearing people talk. Um, so what I did, I just wasn't satisfied with the numbers and such I was reading in these articles. So I went to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, and they keep a pretty thorough record of prices of oil and production rates and such like that. And I guess the hardest thing I had trouble trying to find was like the actual cost to produce oil in the U.S. versus the actual cost to produce oil in Saudi Arabia. But I found that too, which I need that to help support my theory onto why if this is a good thing or a bad thing. I'm leaning more towards, just so you know, I'm leaning more towards why it's a bad thing. It's kind of sucks. It's like you see the price of oil go down, you're like, oh, it's great. It's like my cost of heating expense has gone down, the cost of traveling is going down, and all that. But there's a lot of other things you have to take into consideration as to why this is a good thing and a bad thing, and I'm going to go over that in this situation. Now, in the media, the White House is saying, oh, they're basically bragging about how great it was. This was the first year in 20 years that we actually produced more oil than we imported. Now, if you look at it in a narrow kind of way, you're like, yeah, that is good. We're kicking ass. We're producing more oil than Saudi Arabia. We're going to become independent and such and blah blah blah. But no one's going to buy the oil if it costs more to produce than what Saudi Arabia can do it for. And Saudi Arabia is basically holding the cost of the production of U.S. oil hostage in the United States. In the end, OPEC's going to win this. They're gonna strong arm the U.S. and they're gonna be like, this is the price you have to maintain your oil if you want to produce it and sell it in the United States. And I'll get to that, why that is the case. And then I'm going to get to other factors why what's going on right now is not a good thing. Um, in 2014, we produced 3,200,000,000 barrels of oil. Billions, that's billions of barrels. And then we imported only 2,600,000,000. So that's the first time. Now last year we produced 2,700,000,000 and imported 2,800,000,000. Now they make this sound like this is a great event that oh wow, look what we've done. We've actually produced more oil than we imported. And the last time we did that, was let's see, in 93. Yeah, so 93 was the last time we produced more oil than we imported. But what they forget to leave out is that all the years before 93, and I only went back to 1920, we always produced more oil than we imported. It's not until Clinton took office in 93, and then the year after that, that we actually started to import more oil than we were producing. If you're looking at my chart, I don't know how well you're going to be able to see it once I process it into video format and get it on YouTube. But these red lines here equal they're recession years. They're saying that recession of 2008 that we had, if you go to the .gov website, it's actually started in 07, and they're saying it ended in 09. I still feel like we're kind of in a recession. There's still a lot of people unemployed. The unemployment numbers are nowhere near being accurate. We don't know how many people actually found jobs before their unemployment ran out. And we all know, if you've been keeping up with this stuff, that the unemployment rates numbers have been skewed ever since. As long as they've been keeping track of unemployment, it's been skewed because they do not count the number of people that are actually ran out of unemployment benefits. Other interesting information I found here, the average price of a barrel of oil in 2013 was $95.99. In 2014, this year, I had to basically estimate the last 3 months because it only went up to I think August or whatever, or October. So I had to estimate the last three. So it's pretty darn close. So it came out to around $68 a barrel this year. Now, I don't know if this is like an error on the U.S. Energy Information Administration website, but they actually already listed the average price of oil for 2015, which I don't understand. I'm like, how can they know? They listed it at $62 a barrel. So one of the things, we have to keep in mind, no matter how good the technology becomes for fracking, it'll never get cheaper than actually drilling and pumping oil. And that's where Saudi Arabia has the advantage. So I kind of went over that with you guys already, but I just have to reiterate that because that's important. That's their OPEC's going to be in control of this game, way beyond 2020 up to 2030, maybe even beyond that, so I guess an example of like that would be if I was a business and I had a competitor in town and there was only one customer who was like a millionaire, and if I wanted to put that other guy out of business, I would simply just reduce my labor costs. As long as I provided good quality work or close to it, I could put this other guy out of business as long as I got deep pockets too, because I'm obviously not going to make as much money and I possibly might lose money, and that's what Saudi Arabia is doing. They're to the point where they're willing to drop the oil so low, they're willing to lose money because they have really deep pockets and they can maintain this for a long time. And during that time, you're going to see businesses, you're going to see the oil and shale industry in the U.S., it's going to shrink. It's going to start cutting back. It's going to start canceling projects. Sorry, I got the burp there. It's going to start canceling projects, and some of them are going to go out of business. Now, how many go out of business depends on how long Saudi Arabia wants to keep their oil prices low. You know, like I said, they can do it. A lot of I read a lot of articles online saying, "Oh, they can't do it for very long." And they're not really telling me where the hell are you getting your numbers to make this, this prediction that they can't do it for very long. I'm going to show you uh, a chart I found on here on the U.S. Energy Administration site. Let's see, where was it at? Okay, this is the cost for producing crude oil and natural gas, and the only numbers they have are from 2007 to 2009. That is the most recent they have. Now, in the United States, the total upstream cost. Now, the total upstream cost is your lifting costs and your finding costs. So the finding cost is basically the cost, all the money that goes into technology to locate and survey and find places where they think there's oil in the shale. And then you have the lifting cost, which is the cost of extracting that oil and putting it in barrels, refining it, and blah blah blah, and all that stuff. And so they add these two costs together, and that gives you your total upstream cost. Now, they're saying, in a lot of articles I read, they're saying, Saudi Arabia can hang around $60 a barrel and still make a profit. And I just don't believe that. Judging by the numbers I found on here, they can go a lot lower than that. Now, the highest upstream cost in the U.S., and that's for offshore, is $51.60 a barrel. So you have about 80% of the fracking companies in the U.S. can still make a profit as long as oil is like at $50 a barrel. That's just a rough estimate. The other 20% are screwed. They're probably cutting back and getting ready to close their doors anyway. I just read an article about one Australian company that just closed its doors, a fracking company. But that's besides the point. Now, if you go to the other countries, if you even take the onshore cost of producing, the total upstream cost is $31.38 in the U.S. Now, if you go to other countries, Canada is $24.76. Africa, we don't have to worry about them. But Middle East, $16.88. So what this is telling me is they can probably go all the way down to $35 a barrel if they wanted to, and they could maintain that for a while. At anything below $50, fracking companies in the U.S. are going to close their doors. So what does that mean? There's a lot of variables now into this. So what's the president, what's the Senate, what's Congress going to do if Saudi Arabia continues this onslaught of keeping oil prices down? They're going to have to negotiate with Saudi Arabia to save these fracking companies in the U.S. because let's not forget, a lot of jobs, hundreds of thousands of jobs were created by the fracking industry in the U.S. That's one of the main things Obama said, why our economy was improving, which I don't really think it was. But that was one of his main reasons for saying the economy was improving, because we were creating all these fracking jobs, and therefore these guys are making money, and then they're putting money back into the economy, and then you have all these specialized service industries that are attached to the fracking companies. So they may not be a fracker, but they provide hot coffee, they provide hotel rooms, they provide food, they provide heaters, freight trucking companies, they provide shipping. So all these companies, it's like intertwined now with the fracking company, because the fracking business, it grew so fast, and the U.S. was expecting it to create around 600,000 more jobs, but it's already created 100,000 of jobs, and there's a lot of businesses dependent on it. Um, so if Saudi Arabia maintains this, where they're not cutting production, they've even talked about actually producing their production to lower the value of oil even more. So there's got to be a give and take here. If the U.S. can't negotiate something with OPEC, which is a combination of 12 countries that provide 30%, 36% of the oil to the world, we're gonna have we're gonna have problems, and it's only gonna get worse. The damage is done already right now. We just haven't felt it all yet. Everybody's thinking it's great that they're paying lower housing bills and all that stuff, but one thing, if you're really paying attention, you're gonna notice, well, if oil's gone down, why isn't the price of my food going down in the supermarket? Why isn't the price of computers going down? Why isn't the price of a lot of consumer goods in the US going down? Well, you have to go back to, the bailouts and what the Federal Reserve's been doing. They were pumping $85 billion into the economy every month by buying treasury bonds. So they were buying basically $85 billion of treasury bonds every month. So basically, the simple explanation for that is they were printing $85 billion of extra cash and just throwing it into the economy. And they did that for so many years, so many years. And then they started dropping it by $10 billion a month. I think it's down to $15 billion right now. And then they had QE. QE was quantitative easing. Quantitative easing was basically the process of buying the U.S. Treasury bonds and printing extra money and buying it. So what inflation? Well, how can I say this? When you print a lot of money like that, and then on top of that, you have your interest rates really low. I think it's like 0.02% or something like that. What happens is, when the interest rates are low, banks start lending out more money. More people have more money to spend. So if you look at a balance sheet, when you're loaning out all this money, you're creating a liability. You're basically, just like with the housing bubble, the same thing. You're when you give all this money out, and you're not, and you expect the interest rates to stay low, it starts raising the price of things, because it's getting riskier to make stuff now and stuff like that. The easiest way I can explain it is, like I said, with the balance sheet. Because inflation and interest rates are tied together, and when you print a lot of money at low interest rate, the price of the consumer price index goes up. But anyway, so we have that issue right now, where the price of products are still going up, even though the price of oil is going down. Hold on a second, I gotta get a drink here. My throat's getting dry. Now, going into 2015, Janet Yellen, she's like the chairman of the board of governors for the Federal Reserve, said she's not going to take into account unemployment anymore when they decide if they want to raise the interest rates in 2015. And this could happen either in April or in the summer of 2015. And what this is going to do, like out of the last 13 out of the last 16 times the Federal Reserve raised the interest rates, 13 of those times the economy retracted, and things like technology and energy prices increased. So what we have here is, by summertime, and I think we're going to have all this, this false illusion of the economy doing better and such, and we have low oil prices and stuff like that. It's all going to be basically illusion. And plus, quantitative easing is going to be gone too, which they're going to end in 2015 as well. So now you got the U.S. Treasury not buying any more bonds. You got the interest rate increasing, and usually what happens in the market 6 months prior, usually to the the how can I say it? 6 months prior to interest rates being increased, companies take action. They start pulling back and not hiring as much, letting people go because they think the interest rates are going to rise. So they start pulling back, and what I think is going to happen by that time, Saudi Arabia is still keeping this price war going on by keeping the oil low on that. The let's just say for 2015 we're going to import more oil probably than we're going to produce. So the price of oil is going to go back up again. We're going to see that $3 to $4 gallon of oil in 2015, and that mixed in with the interest rates going up, uh, that mixed in with all the people that lost their jobs or were laid off because the fracking industry had to cut back. Um, that also mixed in with the fact that Obamacare is going to be in effect for all employers. You're looking at a you're looking at a real kind of basically toxic concoction for 2015. Now, some financial columnists they're predicting the stock market to hit 2200 in 2015, and it very well could. It's hovering right around like 1800 right now, but I think this is simply going to be an illusion. I also see it dropping back down to possibly 800 or less, and unfortunately this time there's not going to be any bailout. If you After doing a little, it kind of reminds me of the Arab oil embargo in 1973, where the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, hit over 9%. Though it was not the main cause of inflation, it was an unforeseen event that contributed to it. Well, I think the unforeseen event this time is going to be the gas prices going back up, and we even have like the possibility of the college loan bubble bursting as well. So there's a lot. This could be like, if you remember back to those, well, not remember, if you research back to that time, that's when gas shot up to like $5 a gallon, and that was like back in '73, back in the early '70s. It's going to be a lot worse because there's nothing going to be able to bail us out this time. We have $18 trillion in debt. By the time this occurs, we'll probably have $19 to $20 trillion in debt. So this is really, really bad. Um, that's why I think the price of oil dropping right now is definitely a negative thing. It's gonna cost the jobs of a lot of people in the U.S., and it's just gonna give us this false illusion that the economy is doing well, and one day we're gonna wake up and bam, it's all gonna go to shit. So that's kind of like my thoughts on it. Here's a good article that I read. Um, Basically, $50 below. It would take a drop in crude oil prices to about $50 a barrel before the U.S. oil production growth would be choked off. So we can't, at $50 a barrel, if it gets to that, that's when this whole entire mess is gonna start. So all I can say is enjoy the low gas prices. It's gonna, it's gonna probably make your life a little bit easier. But then as 2015 goes on, gas will go back up to, it's $3 a thing. And then another problem is, if the economy does become really bad due to all this other stuff, the price of oil could drop again due to demand. There's not enough demand for it because there's not enough manufacturers who need the oil and such. But on the other hand, Saudi Arabia could raise it. They can make the oil price anything they want. OPEC can do that. They control 36% of the world's oil. Um, Another thing to factor in, it just gets crazy after you think about it. But there's a lot of other countries that are pumping a lot of oil into the market as well. and who knows how much they're going to pump into the market in 2015. So yeah, this could be a really big mess by the time it's all said and done. So I don't know. Leave your comments below what you feel, what you think 2015 is going to bring, and if you think low oil prices is a good thing or bad thing. And just keep in mind, like I said, no amount of fracking technology, no matter how good it is, will never be able to produce oil cheaper than drilling and pumping. It's impossible unless they come up with a teleportation device that can extract the oil, right from the shale without any drilling. Well, that's never going to happen. Not in our lifetimes, but okay. Well, I'm glad you guys tuned into my channel here, and I will talk to you guys later. Please don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you later. Alright, bye. Oh, and just a few more things I forgot to throw into my discussion there about what Saudi Arabia is doing by not lowering their production, possibly even increasing it in down the road. Uh, I think it's going to cause some tension in the Middle East, specifically with Iran, because they are dependent on their oil income. Russia is definitely dependent on their oil income, and by Saudi Arabia doing what they're doing in the U.S., they're not really going to be a factor by then. But if Saudi Arabia keeps their oil low, Russia's going to want to probably do something. It's a possibility. They could. Who knows? With all the stuff we know about what governments have done in the past, I could see some kind of false flag operation going on. I could see some kind of tension or possibly even a war in the Middle East occurring. If this does happen, that it actually it'll be a good thing for the fracking companies in the U.S., whichever ones are left. But there's so many variables, we don't know what's going to happen. But something's got to give. Usually, anytime any resource gets out of control or gets limited, or this is kind of like this is kind of like economic warfare. This is what's going on in the world right now. That Russia's ruble is declining rapidly, and they're dependent on their oil income. And if the price of oil keeps dropping, that's definitely a threat to Russia's national security. And then you got Putin, or Putin, he's not all there. Who knows what he'll do? Who knows what Iran will do? So I don't know. There's just things to think about, like in 2015 as well. So I will say on the record, I won't be surprised if some kind of war breaks out in the Middle East. But that's just another variable to take into consideration. So anyway, we'll find out once we get there. Alright guys, we'll talk to you later.